Well, welcome to Staying Healthy Naturally. I'm your host, Dr. Gary Krakoff. I'm a pharmacist at Johnson Compounding and Wellness in Waltham and have a degree in naturopathic medicine. And I'm very excited to have Callie joining us today. Callie Patrick is a sleep wellness coach who helps stressed out, busy professionals learn how to sleep better. And Callie, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Gary.
Oh, it's my pleasure. First off, one of the things that I feel is very important and we stress over at the Wellness Center is how important sleep and quality sleep is. When we sleep, we recharge our adrenals. It's when our liver does most of its detoxing. And another real important thing is it's when the body repairs, even just from normal wear and tear of everyday life, but from any damage that's been done to our system. So sleep is really one of the major pillars of being healthy. And nowadays, I think it's probably one of the biggest categories we have people coming in to the Wellness Center or calling is they're not sleeping well, they're anxious, they're stressed, and it seems to snowball. The more stressed you are, the worse you sleep. The worse you sleep, you can't deal with stress the next day. So I guess where we want to start is what is a sleep wellness coach?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, I work primarily with stressed out, busy professionals. So people who have trouble falling asleep at night, they have trouble staying asleep. So people who wake up at, the famous hour of 3 a.m.
Wonderful time.
and they are, oh yes, it is. And they're thinking, they're strategizing, they're planning, they're continuing to work. Perhaps they're continuing or they're worrying. So those are people that I tend to work with. There are also people who, might have tendencies toward, what we call type A, perfectionist, people who have a lot of responsibilities. And so what I do is depending on the nature of their expressed problem. So for example, if they're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, or perhaps if they're having trouble with energy that sustains them throughout their busy day, then we really take a look at what's happening in their life from all different perspectives, right? Where are their stressors? What are their obligations, their responsibilities? What pressure are they putting on themselves, right? And
Life
then
in
like any,
general.
yeah, and like any good coach would do, we create a vision. What is the ideal state? Where are we today? And we work together to move from the current state to the ideal state with small, very practical, actionable steps that get them to where they want to go.
Well, that sounds great, and it sounds like it's a great fit to the flip side of it, which is what we do at the Wellness Center. A lot of people, where they're getting referred by their doctors or they get to us and they're exhausted and their adrenals are, it's like a battery, it's just run down, they're not sleeping, they're not getting recharged. And this, I think, is very, very important for the listeners to hear what you do, because what taking supplements very can be very, very important and very helpful, but it's not the final answer, because the lack of the supplements isn't why you're not sleeping well. It's your diet, your lifestyle, the way you handle pressures, the way you let things build up. And so I think when necessary, a combination of the two would probably get people back into balance, back to baseline, and sailing off into the sunset a lot quicker and easier. And it's never one thing is the sure fix.
Absolutely.
So, I'm not sure where you began your journey, but a lot of people's journeys are very, very interesting. Where did you start, and how did you wind up doing this?
Yes, that's a question I love answering. So up until about 2011, I was happily working as a manager in the software industry.
No
And
stress there.
yeah, and so designing software ideally in a way that allowed people to use it intuitively without wanting to throw their laptop out the window because it was confusing or difficult. And somewhere along that profession, I started suffering from what we now diagnose as burnout. Right. So from the stress, a lot of long hours, a
Yes.
lot of just obligations and responsibilities that weren't realistic, and I was personally having trouble setting boundaries. I had a wonderful schedule where I said, okay, I'm going to take my lunch break from 12 to 1 every day, and I'm going to do something for myself.
And how did
And
that
then
work out?
that worked out that I had 4 meetings scheduled at lunchtime every day because that's when people had time to meet.
Yep. So great
And so,
intentions, but poor
right. And so,
execution.
well, and staying healthy in that particular culture, for me at least, was just very challenging. And I didn't quite know how to help myself. And so not just during the day that I had the stress and the anxiety of getting things done, but obviously that carried into my night, and, had difficulty sleeping. I had never been a particularly good sleeper. And, I had done all the things. I'd done the sleep study, was watched in the lab, was given the drugs, tried the supplements, and nothing seemed to work for a long period of time. The problem just kept coming back. And so really where this started was me being interested in helping myself feel better. It's pretty selfish, to be honest.
No, it
Um,
was very
but
smart because look where it brought you. Now you can be helping other
exactly.
people.
Exactly. So in about 2011, 2012 timeframe, I actually took a leave of absence from my work, and I threw myself into a yoga teacher training program, which I'd been exploring yoga, meditation, and, I guess some of the more natural
Hmm.
ways to be healthy and be preventative in my care. And I thought, I just need a break. I just want to go off and do this and learn more about it. And I just, my eyes got opened, and not even to the potential of that kind of content for this application, but also to the fact that I felt like a completely different person. Like the way I felt on the inside, just so much lighter and more relaxed and more comfortable. It was night and day
And isn't it amazing because that feeling is the real you. That's your baseline. And
Exactly.
we're used to energy and thought process being way down low, and we just chalk it up to I'm in my 30s or I'm in my 40s, I'm not 18, and that's the new normal. Even on the digestive side, people who are bloated, tired after a meal, that's normal. But it isn't normal. We confuse common and normal. And
Absolutely.
it's mind blowing how feeling good feels because we really don't, a lot of us don't know what feeling good feels like.
Absolutely. And when I work with people one-on-one, part of what we do is we generally speaking move them from that point of exhaustion to a point of, okay, now I'm not exhausted. But and then people think, oh, well, I'm done.
That's just the
But
beginning.
that's just the beginning. Now you're at a good baseline where we can start moving you to feeling vital and really powerful and good, and having the extra energy. We call it extra energy, right? But to do all those things that feel important that one couldn't do before.
Okay, and so now you're here. I mentioned before we started recording, it was very interesting in the papers today and on TV and the news. They're talking about everyone's been cooped up for months and the unknown of what the future, near future, far future is going to bring has really hit people hard. Sleeping issues, anxiety, depression, stress, and people are turning and doctors are writing prescriptions for Xanax and Valium and Ativan and Ambien, and the some of the medical profession is really worried because yes, these drugs do help calm you down temporarily or do knock you out so you're not up walking the hallways at night, but they are very addictive. They're habit forming if they're used all the time, and they also are very hard to get off of. It can sometimes take 3, 6 months, a year to slowly taper off. So that's why I'm glad we scheduled this, because I think a lot of people with stress building up, there's a lot they can do without pharmaceuticals. And thank God we have them. Sometimes they're needed, but they're not the answer. They're just a very effective band-aid. So who do you typically work with? Is it just the type A vice president of an international corporation, or is it some of us little people?
Oh, of course. Yes. I mean, the age range is around, the Gen X kind of demographic.
Yeah.
I don't, I of course, I have people who are active agers. I also have people who are younger than that. I don't work with teens or children or with the elderly because, as you probably know, there's different reasons why sleep or energy might be an issue at that point in their life.
Okay.
So I do work much more with the stress, the anxiety, with the mental barriers to sleeping.
So,
And I
go
go
ahead. No, you go.
ahead. I love that you mentioned about the medications, right? And these being useful as a temporary get me over the hurdle of,
Yep.
hey, I'm just really exhausted. The next day I can't function well. I'm depleted. I can't get myself out of the hole, right? These are really good uses for the prescriptions and even sometimes the supplements, but they're not intended, as you say, to be long term.
Or the
Um,
final answer. They're just can be a
absolutely.
part of the solution.
And it's a little scary to me because even before the pandemic, and I do think it's getting worse with, all the things that we're dealing with right now. But, I look on social media and see people, with the threads of I'm having trouble sleeping well. And I'm in this one insomnia group and some people are on 15 different, it's like a cocktail of help me sleep.
Yeah.
And to me, that's absolutely terrifying because they're still saying, hey, I'm not
That's
sleeping.
right.
And what else can I add or what can I tweak or change?
Instead
And
of how is this working for me, and maybe I need to go down a different road.
exactly,
But
exactly. And
also, I think part of the problem is people, the information isn't readily available. They don't know that there are other avenues.
right. And there are things that, and part of the way I work with people, there are things that people can do within 5 minutes, within 15 minutes to, bring down their nervous system, right? To bring it into that rest and relaxation response that they don't take hours. People don't need to, as great as exercising and running for an hour is, or, doing an hour yoga class is for your system. It doesn't need to take that long,
Yep.
but we can support the ebbs and flows of energy throughout the day without and substances meaning also caffeine and sugar and
Yeah.
we didn't talk too much about those, but there are things that are quick. I think the problem is we're looking for quick, and the pill is the
Quick.
quick, but
Now,
there are other quick
things.
things.
Well, just simple things like going way, way back. You always heard when someone's real upset and they're gonna blow up or say something. Someone says, "Okay, let's do 3 deep, slow breaths." Now we have the science behind that. Biochemically in the body, taking a deep breath in through the nose, holding it, and out slowly through the mouth. 3 breaths like that change the acidity in the body. It helps you alkalinize. It changes the CO2 and oxygen levels. It calms
Absolutely.
the adrenals down. It helps reset the pituitary, which controls all the different hormones. And that's something, if you're in a boardroom, if you're on a Zoom call, if you're with your kids at home, that's something that you can do without even telling anyone you're doing it. We should be breathing, and I know you work a lot with the shallow breaths and the deep breaths. We should be like a little kid. When they breathe, their belly goes out. And because it's a deep breath, we're worried about how's my stomach going to look, so I'll take shallow breaths. Can you talk for a minute about breathing?
I can say a couple things about it. And the first thing I'll say about it is that the breathing techniques that, a lot of these come from yogic traditions, they become much more mainstream. And I think part of that is that we're seeing, the science now backing them up. But I think with a lot of people, they try something and it doesn't work for them. So for example, the 4-7-8 breath is very popular right now. breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8, right? Or
Yep.
maybe it's the other way around. I
You
don't even
just
do
do
this
it.
breath.
Yeah.
Um, well, but for many people, getting to a breath of 4-4 is very challenging.
Yeah.
And so, they might see this recommended,
And they
they'll do a
can't do
Google
it.
search and they can't do it. And they say, well, it doesn't work. I can't do it. Or it just feels awful. And of course it does, because if you've been training yourself with stress and anxiety into a short, shallow breath or holding your breath throughout the day, then making that leap to a 7 or 8 count breath, that is a huge, remember I talked about moving people from where they are to where they want to go.
Baby
That's a
steps.
that's a huge gap. And there's ways to do that incrementally that don't feel awful,
Yep.
right? That are doable. And so that's one thing I'll say about the breath there. And, it's so important, I think, for feelings of daytime energy, right? And I talk a little bit about this in the webinar that I give on the lifestyle habits, wrecking your sleep, right? I talk about improper breathing as one of those things. And so when we're trained in that short, shallow breath throughout the day, that's not a relaxing, restful breath. And that carries into our night,
And
right?
it disrupts everything, because if you're not oxygenating properly and getting rid of carbon dioxide properly, a lot of metabolic processes in the body can't function normally, which then stresses the whole system and makes you go backwards. And so simple things
Right.
like breathing, you mentioned the eating. When we get stressed, we want the comfort foods. The body needs blood sugars going up and down, so we go for the simple carbs, the sugars, the caffeine, which at the moment make you feel better, but 15, 20 minutes later you drop back down to probably lower than you were before, so you're seesawing. So how do I stop doing this? And that's where people need the plan. So I'm going to put you on the spot. For all the people who are listening that are having trouble sleeping, what's your number one tip?
So my number one tip is to actually stop. A lot of people are very focused on what can I do before bed? What's the sleep hygiene? What's the bedtime ritual? And that's all great. I don't want to dismiss that. That
It's
if
important.
it's important, but we're very focused on that. And I see a lot of people, both online and the people who come to me, say, I've done all the things. I still have a problem and I can't figure out why. And so my number one tip for people is to recognize that their daytime activities and what they're doing and how they're doing it really do have an impact on the night. And
Absolutely.
so the root causes of the nighttime problems are often, there's clues that are available throughout the day. And so part of what I do as a sleep wellness coach is actually, help people look at their day and see, oh, this might be impacting my ability to fall asleep, my ability to stay asleep. And then how do I make those changes during the day? And like you said, it could be breathing patterns, it could be food choices, it can be how much energy I'm taking in terms of information content that's available now, how much news am I reading, how am I dealing with family that I'm
Yep.
trapped with or worried about, right? So it's a lot of different things in combination. And so the looking at the day, right, instead of waking up at 3 a.m. and going, how am I ever going to get through the day, right? I want people to look at the clock at 3 p.m. and go, what have I done today that's going to help me sleep tonight?
Yep. Absolutely. We talk to people about that all the time. It's not the 11 o'clock, what did I do at 10 o'clock? It's the whole day. If you have yourself stressed out from a biological point of view, your adrenals are in fight or flight all day. And they need to be down at night to get into REM sleep. So if you're stressed all day, you have supper, you get back on the computer, you're working, answering emails, and super stressed, you're not letting your adrenals get into a normal, and your whole body into a normal rhythm. We should be calming down later in the day, and we shouldn't be overly stressed. We were meant to deal with severe stress for very short bursts. You walk out of a cave and a lion wants to eat you. It doesn't get
Right.
more stressful, but it's over in a couple of minutes, and if you lived, you're not stressed anymore. Whereas waking up stressed and building on it all day. And then we wonder why we're gaining weight or losing weight. We don't have patience with anybody, and we're not sleeping well. So
Right. Now,
now,
and I would actually, if
yeah,
I can stop you there,
sure.
I would actually move up it's not just after supper,
Right, it's all
right?
day.
It's all day.
For,
It's, okay, I woke up, here are some things I did, right? To maybe even get my energy up,
yep,
right? If we wake up and we're feeling sluggish or tired, right? There are things that we can do without caffeine, right? Without sugar that help us set the stage for the day.
yep,
And then as we go through the morning, we do a little work, we deal with some things, we build up some stressors, and then maybe right before lunch, right, we do something, or we
let
feel
it
that
down.
lull after lunch like you mentioned.
Yep,
But we can support that naturally as well. Ideally we don't feel it, right? But
yep.
we do feel it, we accept what we feel, and we go with that flow.
Yep. Now, my mentor 30 years ago said one of the most important things to do, no matter what your life is, how many kids you have, how many jobs you have, is every day, besides eating well and exercise and all these things, he said you have to find minimum 30 minutes to do something you enjoy and not feel guilty that I should be doing something else, because that negates it. And he said it can be doing a crossword puzzle. It can be making a cup of tea and going sitting out on the steps now that the weather's nice and watching the squirrels and birds chase each other, or even reading the paper outside, getting a little sunlight, a little breath of fresh air, not waking up, getting on your cell phone or your computer while coffee is brewing, answering emails that accumulated at night. And he said, even if you have to wake up a half hour earlier and lose a half hour of sleep, that 30 minutes of doing something for you will have more benefit than 30 minutes of lousy sleep. And
Yes, and sadly, people that I work with, we build up to that 30 minutes.
yeah, you start
Right.
with
It's
five.
it's it's literally, we start with five of, and the guilt, I think, is definitely a factor. It's like everybody relies on me. This is going to fall apart without me, right? Especially people, dealing with work overload, and with family issues. Perhaps they're caregiving. Oftentimes we start with 5 minutes or
Yeah,
15 minutes just to see how that feels, right? I talked a little bit at the beginning about, oh, I felt like a different person. When you get a taste of that,
you want it.
then the motivation it's not a discipline, it's not a willpower. It's, oh, wow, I love that feeling. I want more of that.
Yep.
And then it's easier for people to start moving toward that 30 minutes. But the people I work with, honestly, that 30 minutes
You can
is
get a minute and
not
a
going to
half.
happen.
It's good. But also you're right. What I find is once people realize even a baby step forward that they feel a little better, that's a huge leap, because that little step when you're feeling lousy really feels good. And I think we all just need some guidance, and also realize it's not going to be do this for a week and everything's fine. This is change. It's like dieting. I don't like the word diet. Um, but that's why I think diets fail. People lose weight, but it's not a lifestyle you can live with. So then you wind
Right.
up going back. But you're teaching people, for each individual, their life, helping them find their lifestyle that will let them do that high pressure job, have the kids at home, be taken care of a parent or whatever. And that is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm sure there's some questions with COVID and all that. Were these generally in-person meetings, or are they over the internet?
So I have always coached through Zoom
Okay.
online,
That saves a
and
lot of time for a stressful person having to drive
absolutely
over and
right. And so there were a few people who really, pushed me and preferred to see me in person back when that was more reasonable. But I don't typically work that way. I work just like this. I have a 12-week program. We meet on Zoom once a week. And that worked well, not just for people, across the country, but for people who I've worked with many local folks
yeah.
who just, a half hour here, half hour back, even 15 minutes. There's extra overhead with that,
Well,
and
this
we save the time.
well, right, and the most people who are stressed, every minute counts, and to kill a half
Absolutely.
hour, have to change your schedule. This way, you can, and it's not the right way to do it, but they can slot you in when they have that 30-minute break until they
Absolutely. And
realize I'm going to slot everything else in. This is more important than all that.
right, right. And I actually do work on Sundays. I think I had mentioned to you,
Yep.
offline that my weekend is Friday and Saturday because I realized that some people, hey, during the week, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Well,
So
that
I
is
do
great.
see
You're very
clients on Sundays.
accommodating.
I remember the life all too well.
Well,
So
and that's usually I find the best practitioners or therapists are the people who have experienced it, that had a problem and realized there's another way to deal with this, as opposed to just book knowledge is great, but having gone through it, you experience that little bit of feeling better and wow, this could work. Maybe I'll do 10 minutes of it instead of 5 minutes because it works. This has been fantastic, and I hope we can do it again and build on this.
absolutely.
How do people get in touch with you to get more information?
Sure. So they can go to my website. It's calisleepcoach.com. That's Kali. And there's all sorts of information there. There's some free resources. There's my blog. There's links to a YouTube channel. Also for the month of May, Gary, I know that it's Better Sleep Month
Yep.
and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So I put together a self-paced program called How to Tame Your Anxious Mind so you can get some sleep already. And
Great.
it's fabulous. I just found an article this morning that actually used those words about taming the anxious mind. And so if people aren't, they don't want to do a 12-week program, they're not sure, they like to do it themselves, right? This is a nice way that they can kind of start to fit in. And again, everything's very practical, very short, 5-15 minute little lessons that they can do. And it's a subset of the work I do with clients when I work one-on-one.
Hmm.
Now, of course, if they're interested in sleep wellness coaching, whether they're curious about it or they know that they have a serious problem, on the website is also a way to schedule a clarity call. And that's 30 minutes and it's completely complimentary. And they leave with a strategy that
Okay.
maybe the number one thing that I'm seeing that they could be changing. And, if they decide that coaching is a good fit for them, if we mutually decide that's a good fit for them, then we talk about the 12 weeks. But there's no obligation ever in the clarity call. They just, they walk
Excellent.
away with something.
And then they'll
So
see it works. And they can get information about the Clarity Call on the website.
yes, they can.
And one more time, the website.
CaliSleepCoach.com. That's Kali.
Okay. Callie, thank you so much and have a wonderful day, and we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Great. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You bet. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.